So we're going to go ahead and look at a few things today, but first I do want to go ahead and talk about this. So I definitely feel like America's being trolled and trolled hard. If you have not heard, the FAA had shut down the airspace over the El Paso airport. There were four objects caught on camera flying over the airport, and you can kind of make them out here. The Trump administration officials came out and said that they believed it was Mexican cartels using drones to smuggle drugs or to surveil the border. But then other officials came out directly after and said, wait a minute, hold up. We believe that border agents were firing new laser technology at party balloons. Yes, what used to be weather balloons apparently has evolved into party balloons, and this according to multiple media outlets. And then you have other officials that do not believe either account. They believe something else is going on. When it comes to the drones, there's no evidence of it being cartel drones or being any threat. Matter of fact, the mayor said drones fly in and out of that space all the time. They don't know why they were shot down. And the Department of Homeland Security has tracked tens of thousands of suspected drone sightings in the recent years, but none has posed any threat inside the United States. Matter of fact, the Pentagon recently supplied DHS with anti-drone laser technology, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection deployed it in El Paso on February 9th. People who are familiar with the matter, this is what they told the news, and apparently they said it was just party balloons. The DHS has not responded to a request for comment regarding the agency's deployment of the technology or its role in the airport closure. But apparently one individual had taken video footage of what he believed to be the object, and if this is the object, it's pretty big from the distance he's recording.
So I actually had to pull to the side of the road, see if I could get a good shot of this. You can barely see it, looks like a dot here, but it's actually huge. And there was stuff coming out from the bottom of it.
So as you heard him say, things were coming out of it, and that's pretty big if that was one of the objects to be a party balloon. I mean, they might as well just have said it was a weather balloon. Why mix it up, right? Like, after decades upon decades of calling things weather balloons and swamp gas, why change up the formula? And of course, when it comes to things like this as well, we can't take Project Bluebeam off the table, but there's been a lot of strange objects in the skies, including these black flying things.
El Paso Airport was ordered closed for around 10 days for special security reasons, right? And with orders to kind of down any aircraft that may be posing an imminent threat. And then the restrictions were lifted about a day later. Listen to what Senator Martin Heinrich had to say about the situation.
What I can tell you is that at no time was El Paso under threat, the airport under threat, and at no point was there a need to shut down the airport.
Yeah. But like, Pentagon now has lasers to take out drones. Like last I heard, Pentagon didn't know what they were. At least over Langley.
I told you what I could tell you.
Wise man. Have a good one.
He's bullshitting us, right? Come on, man. Right, this was captured by the journalist Matt Laszlo, which interviewed him, and the dude said quite a bit out loud. There's something more going on. This isn't just surface level. This isn't just normal. There's some weird stuff going down with El Paso, Texas, 200 miles away from the Roswell crash. Makes you think.
That video came from Interstellar Discussion, and yeah, somebody's definitely lying. Of course they are. But either way, does anybody honestly believe we're going to be told the truth? That's part of the great deception. Times are getting stranger and stranger, and 2026 looks like it's going to be the wildest year yet. And a lot of us, we had broken down the 2026 Economist magazine cover. I had did so on my other channel, Minutes of Horror, and just by looking at the cover, it looks very chaotic. And in my opinion, this is quite possibly the most chaotic cover they ever released. Just by looking at it, it looks like the world is on fire. You can see war, you can see missiles, drones, this cargo ship firing a missile at the United States 250th anniversary birthday cake. The reason why people break these covers down every year happens to be because these covers never miss a beat. They always tell us what they're going to go ahead and do ahead of time. It's not prophecies, it's not magic or fortune telling. The so-called powers that be use these covers to tell us what they have in store. And again, it just looks like the world is on fire. And the reason why I'm bringing this cover back up happens to be because I ran across a very interesting post on X, which led to a very interesting article, a news article. This is coming directly from the New York Post. They said, Saturn in Aries, expect possible fires, floods, upheaval, and apocalyptic extremes. This post is getting a lot of views. People are saying, what the heck? What kind of post is this? Is this some kind of threat from the so-called powers that be? There are people saying that this is just pure predictive programming, and this is what I'm going to lean more on, that this is just them, again, like the magazine covers. They're telling us what they're doing or their plans ahead of time. This is also a part of their ritual. Look what this person posted, exactly what I was saying. They said, yeah, we know, and they've shown a photo of the 2026 Economist magazine cover. This is exactly what they were showing us. Now, we know these news agencies, especially the New York Post, are owned and operated by the three-letter organization, so there's nothing surprising there. Now, me personally, I do not believe in any astrology, so their fearish headline really does nothing to me. The only thing is, a lot of those in the so-called powers that be, they operate off things like this. So as I had stated, not just myself, but others have noticed that the 2026 Economist cover shows the world on fire, which is interesting given the fact that Saturn going into Aries, Saturn is on fire, and Saturn is Baal, and a lot of the so-called powers that be are Baal worshippers, which is also interesting, the symbology and the imagery, given the fact of yesterday or a couple days ago, news came out and told us that the Iranian government and the supporters had basically lit a statue of Baal on fire. And a couple days before that, we saw the inverted pentagram inside what looked like to be the Arch of Palmyra, which overlooks the Temple of Baal, set on fire at the 2026 Winter Olympics opening ceremony. So a lot of Baal on fire imagery going into Friday the 13th. Reading this article from the New York Post, it says, it's getting biblical, folks. Biblical for who, I wonder? I can take a few guesses. On February the 13th, Saturn, our dad gene's planet of structure, punishment, wisdom, and limitations, will move into the adrenaline dumpster fire of Aries. The article goes on to talk about Saturn using a sickle, and it goes on to say, this tool is apt when we consider the function of the planet in our lives and the perennial message that we reap what we sow, and are only as strong as our ability to serve, and sacrifice. And we know what they love to sacrifice in abundance. These people are so evil, and even if you follow astrology and you're like, all this is nonsense, they don't know what they're talking about, this is what they believe. I want to read this part of the article where it says Saturn wants to inhibit while Aries wants to burst forth to grow. This incompatibility will mean certain significant challenges for the world. There will also be a planetary alignment of 6 planets on February 28th, and this article goes on to talk about how this planetary alignment is really going to shake things up. And it says, imagine this cocktail talking about this planetary alignment, and you can now understand how the next few years will go. Yikes. The article continues to say, in terms of how that cocktail will shake out, we'll be subject to extreme events. Oh, I'm sure they have something up their sleeve and planned out, and literal and metaphorical upheaval. Saturn represents the durability of structures, buildings, and the Earth itself. With Saturn in the sign of its fall, I anticipate severe earthquakes. In addition, because Saturn is associated with extremes and Aries with extreme force, we could be subject to cold temperatures, heavy rain, flooding, and droughts. It sounds like they have some weather manipulation mixed up in this article as well. I mean, they do that every year, so again, really no surprise. But I do want to go ahead and talk about this part right here where it says, because Saturn represents boundaries and Aries is synonymous with the new and the emerging, borders could be created or redrawn during this transit. So for the first time in its history, for 2026, The Economist magazine, they released 2 covers. They released this cover right here, and they also released this cover, which shows 2 Earths, and it looks like one is eclipsing the other. But if you read the bottom here, it's kind of similar to what that New York Post article said. It says, this year, President Donald Trump has demolished long-standing norms and appended decades-old institutions at breathtaking speed. The old world order is finished, meaning the new world order is coming in, and in 2026, the contours of what will replace it will emerge. You can also see Saturn on the 2025 Economist magazine cover as well. It's on the very top. Baal is on the top of everything. These are Saturn worshippers. Everything they're showing us on their magazine covers, their news articles, they're pretty much telling us they have some wild events in store, these Baal Saturn worshippers. That is why the black cube, the cube of Saturn, is almost in everything.
the cult of the Black Cube, better known as the Saturn Death Cult. The global elite worships the dark side of the planet Saturn and uses occult symbols in modern institutions, and it's been going on since creation.
Yeah.
Basically started with the fallen angels, and it all revolves around the god Saturn. But this god is also the god Baal, the god Molech.
Oh gosh.
And is prevalent in basically every ancient and modern satanic.
Saturn is Satan.
They think it translates from Satan. And the astrology Capricorn, the primary thing in that is Saturn, which is a goat. But the black cube, I'm like, where's the black cube come into this? There's like this dark spot on the top of Saturn that is in the shape of a hexagon. And if you take the hexagon and you make it a 3-dimensional, it makes a cube. What was crazy, if you go to basically any major financial district, they all have a monument of a black cube.
No way.
They believe that they're able to tap into this realm or this deity to be able to enslave the masses. And so the Federal Reserve was based off of that. So it would be slave to debt. JP Morgan, very involved in the Federal Reserve, he has this quote: millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
Oh,
I've never heard that one.
But one thing I immediately popped in my head was BlackRock.
Literally.
They are the number one
Gosh, yeah.
It's literally in plain sight.
corporation that have the majority wealth in the world.
And not just BlackRock, but also Jeffrey. Jeffrey's bank account was named after Baal. The Baal worship goes deep. Moving on, but still talking about demonic activity, this whole Savannah Guthrie missing mom stuff is weird. Now, I get what people are saying when they say it's nothing more than a distraction, but I just can't help but point at the very bizarre stuff that is coming along with this. Like, for example, Savannah Guthrie pretty much quoting The Silence of the Lambs when describing her mom. Also is the fact that her mom going missing 35 years to the date that Silence of the Lambs first premiered in Los Angeles. But now people are talking about this very bizarre clip coming from Mary Carrillo, who stepped in for Savannah Guthrie.
Poor Savannah and her family are in unspeakable, unfathomable pain. You know in the U.S. that her extended family is legion. Savannah, my friend, it's the same way here.
Did y'all see that? That was weird, right? Why'd she say that word?
Her extended family is legion.
Jesus asked a demon-possessed man, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Right? Like, who says that? Now, I'm sure some people out there will say, well, we say that in my family, my Meemaw, she calls us a pack of legions. I'm sure she does. I'm sure she does. Just straight up demons, legion. And I'm sure in one way, shape, or form, they're going to go ahead and use this missing mother as a way to promote Ring, because it seems like video footage came from Ring showing somebody that they believe is some sort of suspect. And you won't believe the time, well, I'm sure you will, the time that this man has shown up on the front porch on the Ring camera. As you guessed it, 33 or 3:30 a.m. Just like they try to use missing dogs to promote Ring during the Super Bowl, they're going to come out and say, well, see, this is why you need to get Ring. In case your mother goes missing during one of our scripted events, you'll be able to find who took her. These legions cannot fool me with their scripted and ritualistic events. But moving on to another demon, Maxwell Jeffrey's accomplice, a lot of people are talking about this underwater society again, this Terra Mars that she was a part of. Matter of fact, this clip from 2014 sounds awfully like the beginnings of the digital ID and collecting data.
It is yours, and you do have a decision to make. So, because you own that 45%, I created a pledge. And the pledge is that you love the ocean, and when you say yes, you love the ocean, you receive a digital passport. And the passport is how I connect you to the global commons. And it's how I then go to the United Nations and say, yes, we have X thousand people who care enough that signed in, that got a passport, and then shared it with 1, 2, 3, 100, 1,000, 1 million of their friends. And we are going to create a global community, because I don't see the things that divide us. Normally what divides us, creed, color, caste, religion, sex, age. I don't see those things. I see us as one species with one home and one common destiny. And I don't see multiple oceans. I don't see the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Mediterranean. I see one ocean, because ultimately everything is connected as we are. But if we don't participate in it, we don't use social media, which is the new tool for connecting each and every one of us and connecting us and our friends across the globe, we're not going to make it. So we have other tools for engagement on the site, which is how I tried to grow the site. So because you do own the ocean, I wanted to, and I worked with Google on this, who would help me start this project. You can actually sponsor and own a piece of the ocean. Obviously, I'm not selling the ocean. It's only a digital representation, but you get to buy a piece of the ocean on here. You get to tell a story about it, and you get to share that story about why that piece of the ocean specifically is important to you. Google creating the same as Google Street under the ocean so that you can dive across the globe and dive underneath and see what goes on. And I have multiple areas that you can dive under the ocean and have this extraordinary 3D image that's fully 360 degrees and look where you're going to dive. And eventually there will be many more of these places. So when you decide you want to go to visit some place in Bali, or you want to go to Monterey, or wherever you want to go, you should be able to go see what am I going to see in the ocean. And frankly, if you don't like diving, you don't like the sea, you can go and have a look at it. It's so gorgeous. It's almost as good as going there. This little chap with a little beacon on his head. So the other thing that I do is I take data and I put it on the site. So you can tag the animals. So part of knowing what's happening in our world is knowing what's happening to the sea creatures that are there. Part of knowing what's happening to the sea creatures, you have to monitor them. So here we have tracking devices. This particular one's done out of Stanford. And on the map, we don't currently have this on the site, but it's coming. You'll be able to track your animals and see when they come to visit you in whatever ocean parcel you have, or see where they are around the world. Of course, we're across every social media platform, Twitter, Facebook, Google, to connect across multiple newspaper called the Daily Cat. Play, what sea creature are you? Go to the Terramar.
Everything about that in the beginning sounded like this one world digital ID. The whole world will be a part of this digital ID system. And not just that, it also sounded like they have this underground society, seeing underground things, underwater bunkers, underwater societies, probably where they take more children to. They're probably no longer on islands, but all under the waters and connected to different spots. The animals tagged are probably code words for children and adults alike that they had taken.
So what can we do? Going to wrap up very fast here. I'd like to suggest that maybe we should be bold, and we should be, on top of all the things that we know, maybe you should think of some strange things. So I'd like to propose two solutions. One is a currency, a digital currency for social good based on our joint ownership of the global commons, which would place a value on fish never previously placed before, and use all the profits to go back in to pay for things that governments have a hard time paying for. And the second thing that I would like to propose is that we all jointly own our global commons. We own 45% of the planet. It is ours.
That is an absolute wild thing to say, but it's not surprising that they believe they own 45% of the planet, if not more.
And though each and every one of us here are represented by a company or a country, we all each have an individual stake and interest in this. And so I think becoming citizens of our global commons, coming together in one united community around our shared love and need of the ocean might also be that. And I am part of the Terramar project. I invite you all to get your passport so that you become not only citizens of where you're from, but you also become joint citizens of land and sea, because we all have a stake and an interest in this, and we need to connect to it in a new way. Thank you.
Freaky Ghislaine Maxwell's deposition is for a second. This is a screenshot of a segment from her deposition, but check this out. They ask her, "Are you a citizen of the United States?" And she responds, "I am." "Are you also a citizen of England?" they ask, and she answers, "I am." But this is where it kind of gets strange. They then ask, "Are you a citizen of any other land?" And she responds, "Terramar." Now, Terramar obviously isn't a land or a country, and yet Ghislaine Maxwell responds in such a way that indicates that it is. Now, maybe she was just joking or being kind of snarky, but given the hot water that she was currently in, I doubt she'd be joking around a lot. So what is Terramar exactly? We know that Terramar was a sustainable ocean development plan where multiple countries would sign up to help protect a portion of the ocean. That's at least what it is on paper. We know that Jeffrey Epstein provided funding for it, and the Clinton Foundation supported it by featuring it on their website. But we don't know really what it actually accomplished. It had no offices. It was basically just a shell company in a way. But despite its origins, purpose, and accomplishments being a bit of a mystery, some very powerful and influential people signed up to support Terramar. For instance, here's Richard Branson tweeting out in November 9th, 2012, "Want to help save the ocean? Join us and become Terramar Project citizens." And note that he uses the word citizens. Now, before you go saying that this was just bad luck on Branson's part, he had no idea what Ghislaine was doing or anything like that. Jeffrey Epstein was already arrested years before that in 2007, so it's not by chance that he publicly decides to endorse the Terramar Project, which was created by Epstein's best friend and recruiter. And like I said previously, with Branson, it gets a little fishy because Richard Branson owns an island not far from Epstein's island, Little St. James, and he hosted the NXIVM sex cult on his island. This is documented public knowledge, as you can see from this headline here. Richard Branson with NXIVM. Billionaire says he knew nothing about Rainier, who was the founder of NXIVM. So I guess it's just really bad luck with Richard Branson, right? He endorses one traffickers project, Terramar, and just accidentally hosts a cult party on his island. Right. Terramar also endorsed Migaloo. Migaloo is a company that constructs yachts that can transform into submarines. Look, all I'm saying is it's a little freaky. We have a trafficker that owns an island next to another guy that owns an island pretty close to his that endorses trafficking, and they have the capability to remain undetected by traveling under the water if they so chose. And the real icing on the cake, guys, is one of the founding sponsors of the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children is Richard Branson, the guy that endorsed Ghislaine Maxwell's Terramar Project and hosted a cult party on his island. P.S. The same guy that designed the Terramar logo created Barack Obama's Hope and Change poster, too.
That great video came from Memory Hold 1, and it would seem like every time they want to go ahead and talk about UFOs and aliens lately, they more focus on the water, either interdimensional or the waters. It's like they're mocking us.
These are entities that are here on this earth, that have been on this earth, that who knows how long, and that we, you know, we think they're coming in from way out. Maybe they did millennia ago, but they're here and they're in these deep water areas. And that's why, I mean, like we say, we know more about the face of the moon than we do what's going on there. Now, we have a higher propensity of sightings around these 5 or 6, I believe, deep water areas. And so to me, it just, it creates a question there. And then when we have naval personnel telling me that we have these sightings and that there's these underwater craft they're chasing that are doing hundreds of miles an hour, and the best we've got is something that does maybe just a little under 40 miles an hour. So I got a lot of questions about that stuff, and I mean, oh my God.
More than likely, there probably is real entities down there, fallen ones, but also these demons that are a part of these projects, these Terramar projects. But talking about the digital ID, it would seem like the digital ID had rolled out in Australia.
Digital ID has arrived in Australia, so should you be worried about being tracked? I'm Dr. Jo Orlando. Let me unpack it for you. So far, it's just in New South Wales and it's a trial only. So if you want to volunteer, you need to be 16 and over. You do a face scan that's matched against another ID, like your driver's license, and you're in. So far, it's only being used for toll rebates, but they've already said a whole lot more services will be added. So what about the tracking part? So when you use it at this point, your face scan data is deleted, but what's kept is an activity log of where you've used it, the date, the time, the purpose, the location, and that activity log is passed over to the government. So it's not like a GPS tracking you or an ankle bracelet, but it is a record of your activity. A lot of people tell me it's not about them doing something wrong. They just want to protect their privacy. And then, of course, there's the face scan data. If that's stolen, it's an issue, as our faces are increasingly being used to unlock services like Medicare, driver's license, voting, that kind of thing. Well, stolen face scan data can be used for those purposes. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on the introduction of this trial?
No, I think not, but they are just going to go ahead and soft launch this to other states until eventually it encompasses the entire world. Even in the United States, they're already rolling out the digital ID in certain states. It's not mandatory, not yet anyway.
We now have solid proof of non-humans walking around us right now. But what are they? And oddly enough, it's around Buckingham Palace, same exact place that we always hear abnormal stories. Now shout out to this girl and this guy up here for the ones who brought this story forward. In just a minute we'll see the guards, and they'll have no thermal signature whatsoever. They come back as cold, but you can see all the normal people around full of color, like any normal human should be. Also used in the military when they're trying to pick up heat signals. The Buckingham Palace guards have always been under heavy scrutiny for how just weird and unhuman they are. Well, look beside the doors right here where we have both humans, and guess what? They are cold as can be. This is some crazy stuff. Here's an image blowing up. You can see the windows and all the areas behind them are obviously emitting heat, but they aren't. They're just straight up cold. We all know the movie They Live, right? It's just funny because we always hear first-hand testimony accounts of being in Buckingham Palace and seeing things super weird and completely unrelated, not relevant whatsoever. We do know that reptiles, just made me think of them, are cold-blooded. They wouldn't really be emitting any kind of heat signature, you know? Now, as I just said earlier, these guards are always under heavy scrutiny. There's even times where, like, how are they even living out there? It's so hot, and they'll give them water. Also, people come out and say that they just act non-human for some reason, but nobody knows why. On to a totally different subject, the background's just for your attention, not real. Did you know in those files that just dropped, there's a whole section about the Illuminatis and these royal families? Also, do y'all remember when the guy was climbing out the window at Buckingham Palace? The scary part is this is not just NPCs around us, it's a whole nother ballgame. What do y'all think these are?
That video came from Moon Henry, and without a doubt, these so-called powers that be, including the royals, are reptiles, but I do strongly wonder if their guards just might be robots.
About the woman that donated a human skull to Goodwill. I saw this on a local Facebook page and immediately had to go and fact check it because what do you mean? First of all, why do you even have that? And secondly, why do you think giving it to Goodwill would be a good idea? So I had to look it up to verify it, right? And when I did, I saw that they still don't know who this woman is. They have security footage of her walking into a Goodwill store in Chelsea, Michigan back on January 26th and then getting into a vehicle and leaving with another woman who drove her there. A little while later, Goodwill called police just before 2 p.m. to tell them that something suspicious had been donated there, and when police got there, they saw what appeared to be a human skull wrapped in a t-shirt. Now, investigators think that the woman may have donated the skull by accident because it was included among a whole bunch of other donated items. So police took the skull from Goodwill and had it taken to a medical examiner who said they're pretty sure that it is real and that it is a human skull, but they had it sent off to the University of Michigan for further analysis, which is a process that takes about 90 days. So because police don't know the identity of this woman, they put out a description of her and the vehicle she was last seen in. They say that she is in her late 40s to early 50s with shoulder-length brown hair, and that she was with another woman of the same description, and that the two of them left the store in a dark gray 4-door SUV.
That video came from Oddities on Elm Street, and yeah, that is very weird. It sounds like either to me they are hiding some evidence, or perhaps they are creating some kind of ritual using the store.
That Courtney Love's mom, Linda Carroll, was a psychotherapist in California's therapy culture during the 60s and the 70s. Linda was a practitioner of humanistic and transpersonal psychology, which was popular at the time. You knew who else was interested in humanistic and transpersonal psychology in California at that time? A little place called Esalen Institute. This institute was full of the top names in cutting-edge psychology for the time. The co-founders were Michael Murphy and Dick Price, who met at Stanford. You know Stanford, the major MK subcontract hub. And P.S., they were there during that time period. We also had Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. They were large influences and contributors to the Esalen Institute. I heard about these guys when I was taking child psychology classes. Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all of that. They both heavily influenced schools in the U.S. And Aldous Huxley, among others. Huge influence to Michael Murphy. He also just happened to be a British and U.S. intelligence asset, among a bazillion other things. You know, author of Brave New World. He definitely needs a deep dive. Now, the humanistic and transpersonal therapy was groundbreaking at that time. And there is no way that Linda, Courtney's mom, would not have come in contact with these individuals. I mean, considering she is practicing this brand new type of therapy in the same state at the same time. Now, of course, there is no documented proof that she had contact with any of these people. But how much circumstantial evidence do we need? And let's suspend reality for a second. Now, let's assume that Linda was surrounded by these individuals who were pioneering this new brand of psychology that she was practicing. Who else was also really, really into this type of psychology? You guessed it, intelligence agencies. And let's just pretend that Linda and these professionals and intelligence agencies are all connected. I then find it very ironic that her daughter, Courtney Love, during the 80s and 90s, was able to possess large amounts of LSD and heroin and was traveling the world handing them out to punk and grunge musicians. And then ironically ends up marrying one of the most influential musicians at that time, whose death, let's be honest, is still a mystery to this day. In my opinion, the cloud of suspicion connecting the agency and Kurt Cobain's death is not very far-fetched at all. I plan on doing a long-form deep dive on the subject, and you can find it here. I'll let you know when I post it. Thoughts?
That video came from Too Much of a Coincidence, and yeah, you're going to find that a lot of these celebrities, musicians, even back in the 80s, they are very connected to the CIA, the three-letter organizations, directly to their parents. A lot of these celebrities look like they are under some mind control, and come to find out, they are.
Hello, true crimer-ers. This is the case of Ronald Irvin. Viewer discretion is advised. This case takes us to Augusta, Georgia, and unfortunately, I have virtually no information about this case. But what I do know is that Ronald Lamont Irvin was born on July 29th, 1965, and he was born and raised in Augusta, Georgia. He graduated high school in 1983, and then he proudly joined the U.S. Army, where he served. And then after that, when he came back, he would end up joining the Sheriff's Department, specifically for Richmond County Sheriff's Department there in Augusta. By the time this case occurred, though, he was no longer a sheriff's deputy. Ronald, who was very devout in his faith, was also an incredibly generous person. He would give anything to anyone as long as he had it. He always seemed to have a smile on his face, and he always made a very good impression with everybody he met. Ronald also had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. This takes us to December 13th, 2011. I don't know the exact address because it's not listed, but it says he lived on Naples Drive in Augusta, so I'm just assuming it's this here. I'm surprised with this being 2011 that there really isn't a lot of info about it. I can't even find like newspaper articles. But at around 1 o'clock in the morning on December 13th, 2011, Ronald's sister, who I guess they lived together, would be awoken by a very loud noise. And what it was actually somebody violently kicking in the front door of the house. Then she hears gunshots going off. And by the time she gets out to see what's going on, she sees Ronald, her brother, on the ground, and he has been shot, and whoever did this is no longer there. Again, this is a guy who even neighbors said that if you asked him for something, he would give it. So like if this was some sort of like random home invasion and maybe they were robbing him, he would have just given them whatever they wanted. And this guy that the neighborhood called Uncle Ronnie, this man who served 2 tours in Iraq, was just gunned down, and nobody knows why. Why did somebody beat down the door of his home and shoot him right in his chest? Unfortunately, the only update they've ever said ever is that there is no update. There is no new information at all. And that's all the information there is about this case. Someone kicked down his door, shot him, and then fled. No motive, no idea who did this, nothing. But somebody somewhere out there has got to know the truth about who did this and why. And perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information on this case, you are asked to please call 706-821-1000. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case.
That video came from Making a True Crimer, and it's really sad after all this time, all the way back to 2011, there is no information on this case or what had happened. And it truly makes you wonder just how many cases, how many horrible things that happen to individuals across the country just get dropped and disappear out of thin air. I'm sure a lot. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please like, as any engagement does help the channel grow. Once again, thank you so much for your support.